And welcome to this video, our third video in the series, beginning the section known as the poetry section in our Old Testament. In English, we often think of the word poem as something rhyming with something else. Roses are red, violets are blue, something that rhymes with red, something that rhymes with blue. But in the ancient Near East, poetry did not actually have to rhyme. But as you'll see, as you work your way through the book of Psalms, you'll often see one line say something, and then the next line will say the same thing, but in a different way, which is very much ancient Near Eastern poetry. Our poetry section has 5 books: Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. And so we'll begin by looking at the book of Job. It is quite possible that the book of Job is the oldest book in our Old Testament. It predates Moses, and Job is probably a contemporary of the patriarch Abraham. Job is a wonderful look at a genuine problem in our life, and that is the problem of evil. Job gives us a glimpse beyond what we can see in this world. We get a glimpse into the heavenly. But I want to caution that not every question that we could possibly ask gets an answer in the book of Job. But it tells us that there are things going on in our world, going on behind the scenes, so to speak, that we may not perceive. We may not know what's going on. And that will be visited again later when we get to the New Testament. In the book of Job, we have some major characters: Job and his 3 friends. God and Satan are also in the book. There's Job's wife, and there's a fellow named Eliud. Job is a man who fears God and shuns evil, and he is rich. And Satan, coming before God, says, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not protected him and blessed him? But if you take away your blessing, he will curse you to your face." This begins this challenge, Satan challenging God in who Job is and why Job fears him. It's interesting that for all that Job loses in the book of Job, he does not curse God. His 3 friends come to visit him, and his 3 friends make an assumption that's a bad assumption then, and it's a bad assumption now. If you suffer, you are suffering because you have done something wrong, and God is punishing you. The book of Job is a testimony against such theology. Unfortunately, that theology continued. It continued into Jesus' day. It continues into our day. I want to also caution you. The end of the book is pure wonder and amazement, but it does not answer the question, why is there evil in the world? Instead, it's a naked look at the fact that there is evil in the world and a question: can you trust God in the face of not understanding why there's evil in this world? The next book in the poetry section is the book of Psalms. This was the hymnal or the prayer book of ancient Israel. About half of the Psalms are attributed to David. And the Psalms cover a variety of interests and topics that people of God face. One of the things that's purely on display in the book of Psalms is honesty. Honesty before God. Many of the Psalms have a rhythm to them of things are bad and I don't understand why, yet will I trust in you. Other times you could say it's more like things aren't fair and evil people do things and I can't see why, yet will I trust you. But there are other psalms that focus worship. They call the people to attention to God and to worship God. I highly recommend to read through the book of Psalms and see ancient man struggling with what it is to be a person of faith when not everything in this world makes sense. Not everything works out the way you would think it would. And now we're on to the book of Proverbs. Proverbs, the sayings of the wise. Proverbs reads very much like ancient Near Eastern wisdom literature. The idea that people have lived, and when people have lived, they have learned lessons. And they can pass those lessons on to the next generation by telling them these proverbs. Largely, the book of Proverbs is presented as King David giving wisdom to Solomon. One thing about the book of Proverbs is, although it has been broken into verses, a verse does not necessarily mean it's the whole thought. In fact, many times the thought will transcend a number of verses, and therefore we don't take a verse out of context. We read what it says in the larger context. But if you want to be wise, read the book of Proverbs. Our second to last book we're going to look at in this section is the book of Ecclesiastes. The Kahilith, or the teacher, looks at a variety of human experiences and comes to the conclusion that it's all nevil, or it's all meaningless, or it's all vanity. He looks at various things, including human achievement, and the fact that human achievement doesn't last, and oftentimes it's forgotten by the next generation. He looks at the fact that wisdom is a good thing, but wisdom is limited. And even if you gather wisdom, that doesn't necessitate that you will have a good life. And finally, injustice. There was injustice in Solomon's day. There's injustice today. And oftentimes, injustice goes unpunished. What do we do then in a world that doesn't always make sense? Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is probably the best known verse of Ecclesiastes, perhaps the best known verse of the Old Testament. It's the background for the song, "To Everything Turn, Turn, Turn." And it lists all these things. There's a time to be born. There's a time to die. There's a time to plant. There's a time to uproot. But it begins with saying that God can use all of these things for his purpose. I believe that this is a great question for you, the reader. Can you trust in God that he can use all things for his purposes? The Kahilith, the teacher's conclusion: fear God and keep the commandments. And our last book in the poetry section is the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs. The book is about sex and how sex is a good thing in God's good creation when used properly. There were traditions amongst Jewish groups that a man wasn't able to read the book of Song of Songs until he was at least 30. There have been times that the explicit nature and the erotic nature of the book made it questioned whether or not it should be in the Bible. And so it has been interpreted allegorically at times as God's love for his people, the same way a husband loves his wife. The thing of it is that sex is part of God's good creation. But like everything within God's good creation, it's possible to make an idol out of it. It's possible to misuse it. And when you do so, there's disaster. The Song of Songs emphasizes that sex between a husband and a wife is a beautiful thing because that's where God created it to be. With that, we reach the end of the poetry section, and I want to invite you to join us again. We have 2 more sections in our Old Testament to go through. Next time, we'll go through the major prophets, and we'll end with the minor prophets. come back again soon.